I want to welcome everyone to our Bible study, although we're not going to study the Bible today. Lord have mercy on us. But we will, I'm sure Joshua will be talking about the church and the church at large, so that's a great blessing. I told Joshua instead of preaching a 15-minute sermon, we'll have him talk in Bible study for an hour. So which is better, which is worse? But Joshua just got back. Yeah, my days are all mixed up this week. Yeah, yours are too. Friday, his plane was delayed about 4 hours or so, but landed safely. Made it here on late Friday. So 10 or 9:40 would be German. What time would that be in Germany about?
2:40, so you add 7 hours.
Add 7 hours, yeah. So he said he'll be good in the morning. It's kind of like in the evening, 3:30, yeah. So he's just getting used to the jet lag and everything else like that. I don't know if there's any other introductions I want to say. So we welcome you back to the States. And I'm sure you'll talk also about vicarage and when that starts and where and everything else like that. So I'm going to turn it over to Joshua Woelmer.
Thank you. And thank you again. I guess this congregation has definitely supported me in every single way in prayers. And I especially thank you this past year for your prayers. And I am very thankful to be a part of this congregation and to be able to speak with you today. Germany, a whole year in Germany. As I was thinking about talking today, how do you summarize a year overseas studying? And so I guess I'll be narrowing my focus as I talk to you today. And so if you have any questions about the first part of what I say, I encourage you to write it down because you might forget it by the time I finish talking. So I guess I first like to talk in general about Germany and my travels. I really can't think of any better European country to visit. I thoroughly enjoyed it, the people, the history, and really the whole experience was amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And really the people are very similar, I think, to Midwestern people and really the German immigrants that, and the Nachfahren, the descendants of the Germans that, are really all around us. And so I really enjoyed the generosity, the helpfulness, the goodwill of the people that I got to know along the way. And I'm very thankful for all the people there that really helped me and provided for me. And so at the same time, you do see, I think, some problems. I think I was able to notice some things in the German culture as well, good and bad things. The Germans are very good at talking about advantages and disadvantages. So they're never, totally for something, but they're also never totally against something. And so that kind of can confuse some of us because I think sometimes we can, that person is, we don't like him at all. There's nothing good about him. But the Germans tend to be more two-sided. And I guess I've adopted a little bit of that, and I'll be telling you a little bit about that today, about Germany. Because I do think you can see the remnants of Lutheranism in Germany, especially in the mentality of the people, especially in West Germany. If you remember, after World War II, Germany was split up. Half of it was controlled by the Allies, and half by the Soviet Union. And you really see a difference. The East Germany still, they have pretty much forgotten much about religion. One person said to me, the West Germans know that they have forgotten Christianity, but it's the East Germans that have even forgotten about Christianity. And so that's very unfortunate. And really in East Germany, in Berlin, in Dresden, Leipzig, there is great mission opportunity. And the church body over in Germany, the Zelk, with whom we are partner churches with, really has taken that up and has started mission congregations in some of these cities, trying to bring the East Germans back to the fold, back to Christianity. And to some degree that's been successful, but to some degree it hasn't been. But yeah, it's the church body that we are fellowship with over there, the Selbstständige Evangelisch-Lutherische Kirche, the independent evangelical Lutheran church in Germany, is very small. It's, I think, about 50,000 members. And they have different issues that they're struggling with. Then again, the Missouri Synod, we always have our issues that we struggle with in our different congregations. And really, I guess the big thing over there right now is women's ordination. With the Zelk, how do they speak against it? Do they speak for it? There's parties within the church that are debating this, and right now they call it an open question. They're not going to ordain women, but at the same time they're not going to speak out against it. And there was just, and so it can be kind of awkward when you're talking to students, because again, some of the students they see it as a possibility. Yeah, we can ordain women. But on the other hand, and this is really what I'm rejoicing about, many of the younger students are speaking out against it more and more. So I think there is hope for the Synod there, and I hope that you pray for them and pray for the church there, that they remain faithful to God's word and really take a firm stand against the culture, because that's really what they're fighting against. The state church in Germany, Sweden, all those state churches have really welcomely opened women's ordination, gay ordination, gay marriage, everything else. They try to integrate with society, and that's what they see themselves as, is a part of society. But I think there's good times ahead for the Zelk, and I will continue to keep them in my prayers, and I hope you keep them in your prayers as well. One good thing is they just had a pastors' convention, and this summer, and they kind of kicked the ball down the road a little bit more, in that they said, we're not going to make any decisions on it just now. However, one thing that's keeping them from adopting women's ordination is what's called the International Lutheran Council. It's a group of church bodies in the world that are very confessional. And the LCMS is a part of it, as well as the church in Canada and the Zelk and the mission province in Scandinavia and various other church bodies. And the Zelk wants to remain a part of this. But the ILC said, once you adopt women's ordination, you're no longer a part of us. It's automatic. You are immediately no longer part. So to some degree, that's keeping the Zelk in the ILC, or it's keeping them away from women's ordination, and I hope they remain faithful to God's word and in that aspect. So moving now to, I guess, the seminary that I was at, there is the church body has a seminary in Oberursel. It's north of Frankfurt, so I stayed there for most of my time. And from Frankfurt's a very international city. It's a lot of planes fly in and out of Frankfurt. It's a central hub for Europe, actually, Germany as well. Germany, but also Europe as a whole. We have America has bases in the area, Mannheim and others, and so it was a very good place for me to be. So then I could have easy flights to some of the places I wanted to visit. I visited Rome, London, Norway. I saw Bethany in Norway. That was a very neat visit. There's a seminary in Oberursel, and there's only 25 students or so there, so it's quite small. They have 5 professors, one for Old Testament, one for New Testament, systematics, history, and practical. And one of the systematics professor is very well known at both our seminaries. He makes yearly trips to America, talks with our professors, and he is very confessional, very good. His name is Professor Klein, and I studied with him, especially the second semester. I took almost all of his courses that he offered, and I really appreciated it because it was hearing language, it was hearing the theology that I've learned, but in another language, and so I was able to learn definitely from him because to a large degree I understood what he was trying to say, especially in some of the more basic classes that he was talking about. Some of the other professors, I'll just say that they've adopted the German style of doing theology, which I disagree with in a lot of aspects. In that it's so much scientific. They talk about theology needs to be a scientific method, scientific way of doing things. So, and unfortunately, that doesn't really lend itself to the congregation. From what I see, from my point of view, when you talk about the scriptures or practical theology in such a scientific way, it doesn't lend itself well to teaching practically in the congregation. So they say one thing about the text and how it's scientific and how, well, we don't know if Paul really wrote this. Well, we don't know if Moses really wrote this part of Genesis. And to me, it's why would you say that? What we would say really is, God spoke through these prophets of old, and the Bible came from these eyewitnesses, and really it was an interesting and really unfortunate, I think, way that some of the professors did theology, but I learned from them. Learned the way that they spoke, learned the way that they did theology, even if I didn't agree with much of what they said. I did enjoy the history professor. He was probably one of my favorite professors, him and Klein, because he was not from Germany. He's actually from Brazil, but his mother language was German. So he knew German, but he spoke it with an accent that was easier for me to understand, which helped. Because my German is okay. I can understand my friends just speaking colloquially. I could understand some of the professors, but when they got into speaking really fast or really complex German, it was a little bit more difficult to understand. And I did enjoy De Silva, especially De Silva, the historical professor, because he had an accent that I could understand a little bit better and follow with his lectures. And I really appreciated his lectures. He also is very confessional, very Lutheran. I took Church History 3 and 4 with him, so talked about the Reformation and the modern era, the Enlightenment. And he had very good critiques of the Enlightenment, and and I enjoyed his talk about Lutheran Reformation, and Lutheran Orthodoxy as well. So those are the profs. Now to the students. I think it's probably one of the best things about going to Germany is meeting the people who I will share the office of ministry with in another country. And meeting and seeing and talking with the students is probably one of the best aspects about my trip there. Getting to talk with them, getting to talk about, where are you in your education? What are you doing? How much do you have to do? What do you think about some of these classes? Talking about them, talking about what they're going to be doing as a pastor, because really the American context is much different than the German context. The way they see their pastors is differently, because the pastor is a part of society in a way, and is meant to, the pastor is supposed to coordinate more within society and more within the village, rather than what I would say, for them, I guess the primary role of a pastor is his societal role, whereas I guess in America, and especially in the LCMS, we would say, no, it's preaching the gospel, it's administration of the sacraments, it's Seelsorge, it's also care for souls. And so it's a little bit different, and they are glad to hear, my perspective as well as an LCMS student, and talk about really what I'm training for, what I'm doing. And for them, it's somewhat of a breath of fresh air, and they enjoyed talking with me and other American students as well for that purpose. And to be sure, many of them are looking forward to studying in America because we have this exchange program. Two German students study at either Fort Wayne or St. Louis. It switches every year. And then one student each from Fort Wayne and St. Louis go to Germany every year. And they look forward to it. They really do. Even though their English might not be so good, then again, I can tell them, well, my German still isn't perfect, so don't expect your English to be perfect either. But they really appreciate their years in St. Louis and Fort Wayne because of the theology that they get there and because of the really a different way of understanding things that our seminaries teach and really the atmosphere of theology that we have at our seminaries. Now, not all the students at the seminary were from the Zelk, which was quite interesting. We had one student from Ukraine. We had 4 students actually from South Africa. And interestingly enough, there was a group of Germans who were immigrating, and they wanted to go to India, but they decided to stop in South Africa because they couldn't go further for weather reasons. They liked it so much, they decided to live there. So there's a group of Germans in South Africa that still speak German. Of course, they also speak Afrikaans. They speak Zulu, or I can't remember all the different languages that they learned. But English was in their schools. They grew up speaking German. So there were 4 of them, and it was a joy to speak with them as well, to hear their situation. Because they're in Africa, and the churches in Africa are growing. It's such a great mission opportunity, and they're starting to see it too. But what they're struggling with is, do we give up German? And in America, we had 2 world wars to purge really German, the language, from the people. But in South Africa, they didn't. And they see the language as being intimately tied with their theology. So what some of the older people see is, if we give up our German, we're giving up our theology and how we do theology, how we speak about theology. Whereas some of the youth, on the other hand, see, no, there's English theology too. We can go to Fort Wayne, we can go to St. Louis, and so in some ways they're better than the seminary at Oberursel. But we need to speak English to speak this common tongue of South Africa with other Africans and with other both black and white, and they see it as a mission opportunity. So that they have their struggles as well, and it was getting to know them as well because their English was fairly good. Although I told them, please don't speak English with me. I need to learn my German. So they did mostly. Listen to me and only speak German. There was one South African who really wanted to speak English at every moment, but I kind of had to tell him, just maybe later. So my last week in Germany, though, I did speak a lot more English. I have to admit, I was just ready to go home. So it was kind of funny. One of my last nights there, we were sitting around drinking some good German beer, and even some of the Germans just started talking English just because they just wanted to try it out, and so it was kind of comedic because I never heard them speak English because I told them don't speak English, but I enjoyed it and enjoyed drinking beer with them, hanging out. It was German beer, German food. I guess one thing I didn't talk about yet. It was great. It was great. It's a lot healthier, too. I got to tell you, the food I ate over there, the wurst, the steaks, the beer, everything. It was not as much fat, not as much sugar. I enjoyed it. It was great. We grilled out quite a lot. And it was actually interesting. It was the South Africans that did all the grilling. Probably because that's what they do every time. Every time they go back to South Africa, they go hunting, and then they grill whatever they catch. So, and in a way, at the seminary, that's kind of their job and the Americans' job. So I got to do some grilling too because I was seen as an expert. Which I can't say I'm exactly an expert at, frying bratwurst, or grilling bratwurst. But I enjoyed the grilling that we did, and hanging out with the students. German beer was great. It's, to be honest, so my dad brews homebrew, so I'm used to good beer. And I had to tell the Germans that. I said, you're going to ask me about the beer, but I got to tell you, I'm used to good beer in America. But I will say this: our beer in America, as with almost anything here in America, it follows the English tradition. So we call our beers porters, stouts, IPAs, and etc. But that comes from the English tradition, whereas in Germans it's either Pilsner, Dunkel, Hefeweizen, which is wheat beer, or they don't even have a brown beer. It's just Dunkel. So, but it was all good. It was great. I enjoyed it, and Jägermeister was not so good. I don't know. It was sweet, but food was great. I love German bread too. That's one thing I'm gonna miss. German bread. I talked with one guy. He said, "You know why they call it Wonder Bread in America?" He said, I told this to Americans. He said, you wonder why they call it Wonder Bread? He says he took a whole loaf and just crumpled it up, and it was a little ball. He says it's a wonder it can get this small. So you can't do that with German bread. I tell you what, you try. It might compact a little bit, but it's hefty stuff, just like their beer, but it's healthy. Oh man, it was great. That's one thing I'll miss definitely is friends, food, the language. I wish my German was perfect, but it'll never be. The Germans are very gracious, though. I've got to say, my German, especially at the beginning of the year, man, I don't know how they understood me. But and that's one thing. What?
Speak some German for us?
Ich kann Deutsch, ja. Aber ja, mein Deutsch ist schlecht in meiner Meinung. Aber ja, what do you want me to say? Vater unser im Himmel, geheiligt werde dein Name, dein Reich komme, dein Wille geschehe, wie im Himmel, so auf Erden. Unser tägliches Brot gib uns heute und vergib uns unsere Sünde, wie auch wir vergeben die Sünde unserer Nächsten. Geheiligt werde, we have to, vergib uns unsere, und, yeah, I know, I'm failing now. I don't know, it's different when you have to say it with everybody. So.
Just tell me you said to hold all the questions.
Yeah, well, I meant to say at the very beginning, it was hold all questions to the end, but, I can't remember it now. It'll come back to me, I'm sure. But, the Germans were very gracious, I gotta say. They were almost too gracious in that they didn't want to correct me. I had to remind them more than once. I said, I know my German's not good. You gotta tell me what I gotta do better. But they were very gracious, very kind, and I kind of wish they were a little bit more antagonistic, a little bit more corrective, but that's all right. I learned enough German to speak with my friends, to understand what was going on around me. Yeah, if I go back, my German's probably not going to be so good. But I'll be able to read it. That's really kind of why I came, was to be able to read our confessions, read our Luther, Church Fathers. And I think in that I can do a fairly good job with the dictionary at hand. And I hope to serve the church in whatever way I can in that aspect. I don't think I'll translate, who knows. But at least reading, and in the original text, reading hymns, reading devotional material, whatever it may be. I'm glad I had this opportunity to learn German and really visit with friends there and learn German and learn German society and experience Europe a little bit too. For that, I was also very thankful. I guess I could tell you everywhere I went. I mean, I visited Rome, visited London, as I said, visited a lot of German cities, but in a way, I didn't come to Europe to visit. Visiting all these cities was kind of a side benefit of going to Germany. For that, I am very thankful. I did visit a lot of the Luther cities: Erfurt, Eisenach, the Wartburg, Leipzig, Dresden, Berlin. I visited München. That was also good. I visited Auernheim, the city where the Woelmers came from. Did that last weekend, actually. Was there last Saturday, Sunday. And yes, that's how you say the name in German, Woelmer. But, okay, it's a running debate in my family in Michigan, how you say the name. But with German, they speak from the front of their mouth. So, ich spreche Deutsch nur mit meinem Mund. Aber when we speak English, we speak from our throat. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but we speak from our throat, just totally. And you can't say German words with an American speaking from the throat. It just that's just the American accent. When Germans try to imitate Americans speaking German, they always try to swallow their German and speak from their throat. So when you try to say our last name, we say, well, my dad says Woelmer, and that's Woelmer, spoken from the throat. We have other families that say Woelmer, also spoken from the throat, but Woelmer. That's spoken from the tip of the mouth, Woelmer. Also the umlauts. If you want to pronounce the umlauts correctly, you speak them from the front of your mouth. Über uns, ü. Not So anyway, I think that's all that I have, and I'll open up for questions right now. So first hand was up. What did I just say? You're talking about the Lord's Prayer? Ja, Vater unser im Himmel, geheiligt werde dein Name, dein Reich komme, und so weiter, etc. Yes. So. The Zelk, yeah. Correct. Yes, they are what's called a free church. So he asked, does the Zelk take any money from the government? And that I would say no. They are a free church, so they are dependent on offerings from the people, from the congregation members, much like in America. But the pastors in Germany, especially in the state church, are used to getting their salary from the government. And so it is a little bit of a struggle because the members of the Zelk purposely don't pay the government the taxes. They pay their taxes, but there's something that you could check your box that you do not belong to the state church. And if you check that box, you don't pay as many taxes. And so the members of the Zelk do have to keep in their mind that that their offerings are paying for their pastor and paying for the church body as a whole. And I think it's a really good thing, though, that the government doesn't give them money, Because as with everything, there's strings attached to everything. And if you take money from the government's going to have a say about what you do, theology, what you believe. And so in many ways, it's a good thing that the Zelk is a free church, independent. So they don't take money from the government.
This is more of a statement. Harold, my husband, he was in seminary, so living in New York City, attended the Lutheran church there, where they had German services in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And he attends there sometimes. And he said that there was a spirituality about the German service. And I guess the German civic, of course, these were probably old people and have more spirituality than some that the Germans do today. But did you notice anything of that sort? It's like a deeper, broader spirituality that they have in their Lutheranism than we have as Americans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good point. I guess that's one thing I didn't talk about was the services themselves while I was in Germany, and I guess the spirituality attached with it. The Germans love Paul Gerhardt. That's very clear, and I love him too. And he's even I think he's even better in the original German. But it's interesting that not only do the Zelk congregations love Paul Gerhardt, but it's almost all society. And that's what, especially in the West Germany, and I think that's kind of what I mentioned earlier, where there is the remnants of Lutheranism that still live in the people. And there's I think, a deep spirituality, a care for your neighbor, and a willingness to help out, and really also a self, you're looking within yourself, recognizing your faults, your failures, recognizing that in a way, you do need forgiveness, and you do need spiritual care. But I would say that many of the Germans look for that spiritual care in the wrong places. Because on Sundays, many of them walk through woods. They want to connect with nature. And in some ways, it is good that on Sundays, everything's closed. There's not many restaurants are open. No businesses are open on Sunday. It is very much of a kind of a, they see it as a spiritual rest. And yes, I think you do see that in their society. But in a way too, they don't actually go to where God offers Himself to us. I mean, the Zelk members to some degree do. But I think as a society, yeah, you do see remnants of Lutheranism and just a spirituality that you don't see in America. So, and in a way, I think you also see how that impacts their political decisions too. Germany has bailed out Greece and to some degree Spain and Italy, and I don't think that's simply Germany wanting to. I don't think that's simply Germany wanting to uphold the euro. I think that's also just a care for these other countries and wanting to help them out, and it's a help of the neighbor, and so for that I commend the Germans and really, yeah, I enjoyed my time there and really the generosity of the people. So, yeah, but good point.
I apologize, I may be even missed it, but you said that I heard that theology between students, German students and American students was different. How is it?
Well, so she asked, how is the theology between American students and German students different? And I would say in many ways it's how it's talked about among the students. When I was at Fort Wayne, and I'm sure it's the same thing as St. Louis, there's an atmosphere of theology. So when we're in our dorms, we just need to go out of our rooms and start talking theology with our students, with the fellow students. We have this mind that, this is something we talk about. In the cafeteria, drinking coffee, no matter what it is. There is this conversation that's going on at seminary, and something that I'm very thankful for, especially at Fort Wayne. Yeah, we do mess around, talk about sports teams or whatever as well at Fort Wayne. But it seems to me that I could describe it as an atmosphere of theology. Whereas at Oberursel, I didn't get that feel at all. They tended to see the classes as the place of theology. So you talk about theology only in the classes. It's very much of coming back to the scientific idea. You study in the classes your theology and what you're going to be doing as a pastor. But then when you go out of the classes, you don't have theological discussions. I mean, to be honest, I didn't talk theology with the students very much. There were opportunities, but it certainly was not the same atmosphere idea that I had at Fort Wayne. The theology itself, I think many of the students are confessional. We share the same belief, same confession, but they just weren't as willing to talk about it as willingly. And another thing I didn't say was that they do have some state church students at the seminary studying Greek, Hebrew, and Latin. And so I could tell when we were talking theology, sometimes, I should say usually, brought up by me, they would kind of quiet down whenever a state church student walked by. Especially if you're talking about women's ordination or even baptism. I brought up we were talking about baptism. And a state church guy came and sat down, and I continued the conversation, even though I saw the fellow Zelk students were kind of getting antsy or nervous. And so I asked him, what do you believe about baptism? And so we talked about that, but you can just see it was kind of uncomfortable. For them, theology belongs in the classroom, and especially, it's a different atmosphere. It's just a different. I tried a little bit to talk with them, to have conversations with them, but if the purpose of you gathering is not for theology, then why bring it up? So, yeah, it's unfortunate. Yep.
Seems to me maybe that atmosphere is because of what you mentioned earlier in your talk, that the pastor's not just primarily responsible for the church, but he's expected to be this social type organizer, and that it's almost like a dual role. So it takes away from his time of studying the word and being the spiritual leader, as well as he must be very conscious, I would think, of what's going on socially.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that's going to undermine what should be his main purpose, and hence I would think that's a lack of conviction to the doctrine.
Yes, I would probably agree with that, in that the sermon then becomes not necessarily preaching God's word, but simply saying, well, how do we understand the events of today? So we'd hear in sermons, well, this happened in the world. How do we understand it? What do we say? I mean, how do we approach it? And it is much of a position in society that the pastor holds, and all you need is really, training for it. Just if you're going to be a doctor, you just need training for that that place in society, and that's your role. That's what you do. So.
So is that a German political correctness that they're kind of using to be careful about saying things that might offend, or are they so super conscious about that as theologians?
Perhaps perhaps they did. Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know if everybody understood or heard her. She said, is it part of this political correctness that Germans have, and that they don't want to offend the other people, and I would agree with that. There is a political correctness of not wanting to offend other people around you, and in a way, I think you see that in all of society. I think that's one reason I think Americans see Germans as serious people. But in a way, though, Germans are serious when they're out in society because they don't want somebody to pretend to be happy when they're not. So everybody's serious, ernst. But then when you get to know them, when you go home with them, when you eat with them, they're lively people. Oh, they're smiling, they're joking around, they're having lots of fun. As soon as they leave their house, they're quiet, they're straight-faced, they're narrow, you're serious because you don't want to offend somebody by expecting them to be happy when they're not. Whereas Americans, we kind of, everybody's got to be happy at all times, and if you're not putting on a happy face, then something's really wrong with you or something. I don't know. That's just kind of the differences between our society that I've kind of noticed, and they see Americans as fake because we're always putting on a smile even when we don't like the person we're talking with. So, I don't know. I see it in myself. I see it in other people. But what are you going to do about it? It's our society. It's what we expect of people. I don't know. So.
Were there, you mentioned, Germany had great beers, right?
Yep.
Were there times where, outside of the classroom training, where you folks went out and had maybe a couple beer, maybe a case, I don't know, and then they started opening up to theology? That's one question. Another question is, are you home now? What are the next steps for you? Are you on that?
Certainly. Yes, I guess I should have mentioned my vicarage, too. I'll approach that question first. Yes, I'm heading to Norman, Oklahoma, Trinity Lutheran Church on Thursday. I will be installed next Sunday as the vicar there. And I think it's a very well-known campus ministry there that they host. I believe many students from this congregation have gone to OU and have attended the LSF, the Lutheran Student Fellowship there. I think we have one or two even now. Yes, there you are. Rachel Palmy as well. So I have plenty of people, I've heard, who will be keeping tabs on me. So, which I'm not afraid about at all. But yes, and I'll be helping out with the LSF. I don't know exactly. I mean, I talked to the vicar there who just left a few Sundays ago. Talked about what I'll be expected to do. A lot of Bible studies. Tuesday nights, the students gather at the vicar's house for, I guess, games, Bible study, interaction. There's a Sunday Bible study that I'll also be teaching. There's Bible study for the graduate students on Thursday night that I'll be teaching. And then I think confirmation on Wednesday night, as well as interacting with the students and organizing various activities. So I'm not exactly sure yet. I should probably talk with Rachel about what they do. I'm not sure right now. I'll figure all that out when I'm there on Thursday, whether it's camping or tornado cleanup, which I'm sure I'll be working with, or ultimate frisbee, I heard is popular, which I'm looking forward to. Because all we played is soccer in Germany. Soccer, volleyball, and they played some, well, they were very generous. They said, hey, let's go play some basketball. And I'm like, really? I know Dirk Nowitzki is popular in Germany, but I don't know if many other Germans play basketball. As it turned out, they were okay. Yes, I tended to score most of the points. My height may have helped, but they were good sports about it, and we had a lot of fun playing basketball. But my soccer skills did get a lot better. I can say that much. I even scored the last goal in the last game that I played in Oberursel. Just Wednesday we played. It was a game-winning goal. Oh. And it wasn't a gimme either. It was a well-earned goal. So, yeah, I enjoyed playing sports. We played soccer, I think, 3 times a week. So that's another part about Germany. It's just, the food is good, food is hefty, but they also exercise a lot, which is good. So I enjoyed playing sports with the students there through rain, snow, ice, everything. But then getting to your first question, after many beers, did you start talking theology? Sometimes, not. I mean, every time we gather, we drink beer. So sometimes, I would say. Not as much as I would like, to be honest. But we talked, and they'll definitely get a taste of what I'm used to when they go to America. So, yeah. I also learned to play Doppelkopf. It's a card game in Germany. It's probably the most confusing card game I have ever played. And the Germans pride themselves that no outsider could ever learn this game. And to be honest, I don't think I won a few times, but it was so confusing. So many rules. Oh my gosh. Doppelkopf. It's worse than pinochle. Yeah, basically, in most card games I've played, if you have a good hand, you can just start laying down good cards and collect all the cards that the other people are playing down. But in Doppelkopf, there's always a card that's higher than yours that somebody else has. So it gets really annoying. So if you play a 10 of hearts, which is the highest card in the game, the rule is the next highest card, the next 10 of hearts can beat it. So you don't want to just play your 10 of hearts because then somebody else will take it, unless you're the last one. Anyway, so are there any other questions?
What was the teaching like in regard to preaching and practice? What was the preaching actually like itself in churches?
It depended on the pastors. The congregation I usually went to was St. John's in Oberursel, right next to the seminary, and it was very good preaching. Of course, it was in a German. He would have an introduction, point 1, point 2, point 3, conclusion. That was his sermon, but it was very good. It was very theological, very. It was a very law, gospel, very comforting sermons. I appreciated them, and I was very thankful to hear from the pastor at that congregation, Pastor Vins, who also studied with my dad, by the way.
Played soccer with that.
Yeah, at Fort Wayne when you guys were students. Yeah. On the other hand, they do see sermons. Some of the sermons weren't so good when I went to other congregations. But then again, to be honest, we have the same, obviously, problems in our synod too. You have some people who see I'm very thankful to be a part of this congregation. Hearing good sermons from my dad, from all the other pastors here, Pastor Preuss, just everybody, and even in Fort Wayne, being surrounded by very good sermons. But we do know that there are congregations and. Where in our synod that preach more prosperity gospel, they don't want to emphasize the law, and by doing so, they actually preach a soft law. But the same things in Germany. You have the confessional pastors, very good law gospel preaching, but then on the other hand, you do have some that's not so helpful, not so spiritually good. So, yep.
What did I hear you say earlier about studying of the original languages? It sounded like, I think I heard you say that it was primarily students in the state church that study
Yep.
the original languages. Why is that?
Because they don't have a university that's close to them that offers the original languages. The study at the seminary is divided really into two parts. And the first part is divided into another two parts, really. So they learn their languages at the outset. They start with Hebrew, then they learn Latin, and then Greek. And some EKD students, so some evangelical, some of the state church students come to Oberursel to learn the languages, because some of the universities don't have some of the universities close to them don't have the professors to teach those languages. And mostly those were local students. So they wanted to stay close to their family. Like one lived in Marburg, which is just an hour on the train ride north, not very far away at all. And some lived south of Frankfurt. But they came to learn the languages. And the languages actually were not taught by Zelk professors, but were rather taught by professors from the University of Frankfurt or from the Frankfurt area. They would bring in a Latin teacher, a Hebrew teacher, or and a Greek teacher to teach those languages. And every Zelk student had to go through that, and they have other students as well going through that program. So did I answer your question? Okay. I think we have time for 2 more questions, or a few more. Yep.
What is the liturgy? What liturgies do they use there? How do they feel about more contemporary?
Yeah. Again, it depends on the congregation, but they have a hymnal, and it's the music. Okay, so the liturgy is not like Divine Service 3 that we have, because Divine Service 3 that we have is based on the Anglican music and the way the Anglicans sing. The German liturgy is very Gregorian chant-like, but I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was very nice and very beautiful. But on the other hand, you do have this reaction to it. They see it as very old, mittelalterliche, Middle Ages-like. And so you do have some congregations that want pop music. Interesting, they don't call it like the German word for contemporary. They call it pop music. And you do have some people reacting against it, but you have some of the youth who like it. And that you kind of saw that at the seminary as well a little bit. You had a few students who wanted pop music in church. But I think that was actually an easier topic to talk about than women's ordination, surprisingly. I'm not exactly sure why, but many of the students were against pop music. And I was able to talk with them probably more about that than the women's ordination. But, yeah.
Was there a student from St. Louis there also? Because you said that usually there's 2, one from Fort Wayne, one from St. Louis.
Yeah, usually. Not so this case. Yeah, there was not a St. Louis student there this year.
So you were the
Yes, I was the only one. Yeah. St. Louis. Okay. I don't want to speak bad of. I mean, okay. St. Louis does not see this exchange program in the same way Fort Wayne does. In Fort Wayne, we know exactly who's going to go to Germany next year. We know they're going to learn German. We know that there is this intention on learning German, learning theology, and going to Germany for a reason. St. Louis guys come to Germany to travel, not so much to learn German, not so much to interact with the students. They don't actually learn German very well, and to be honest, the students at Oberursel see that, and they get ticked off with the St. Louis students. But what can they do? So, interestingly though, St. Louis students in the past few years only come to Germany when they have heard about the German exchange program. So it's not even being spoke about. It's not even like they don't even hear about the option to study in Germany unless there's another German student there who's studying there. So, for example, this past school year, there were 2 German students who were at St. Louis studying. Well, what do? They tell people, oh yeah, I'm in Germany. There's this exchange program that we have between our 2 seminaries. So then they get people interested, and then people, so there's going to be a German student coming to Oberursel next year. But when the students go to Fort Wayne, there's nobody in St. Louis to tell the St. Louis people that there's a study abroad program in Germany. So that was the reason that I'm the only one now. I was the only one in Germany this past year. Was nobody told St. Louis that there was actually a study abroad program. So it was unfortunate, but what can you do?
All right.
Well-
Quickly, Rich.
I was just curious, how is it determined who goes? Because I'm sure there's more than one guy seminary.
Yeah, you talk with Professor Schultz at the seminary, and he kind of looks at the different people who are interested and then kind of picks one. There is somewhat of a process. It's not official in that we don't fill out a form on why we'd like to go to Germany. But he knows the people, he knows personalities, who he wants going over there. And generally, within a month or so, it's kind of decided who will go. So yeah, that's.
All right, let's give him a hand.